The Debt of a Loyal Heart, a Novel. Chapter 1. A New Beginning. The bitter wind tore through the streets as Daniel Harper wrapped his coat tighter around his body. The city had never felt colder or lonelier. He had lost his job 2 weeks ago, and the weight of unpaid bills crushed his spirit. He was a man in his mid-30s, strong and capable, but the world had been unforgiving lately. As he walked down the alley behind the grocery store, his boots crunching against patches of old snow, he heard a faint whimper. Pausing, he turned toward a pile of broken crates and bags of discarded food. A small brown shape huddled there, shivering. Daniel knelt and reached out. "Hey, buddy, what are you doing out here?" The dog, a young mutt with matted fur and ribs showing beneath its skin, flinched at first, but then sniffed the air cautiously. His golden eyes met Daniel's, filled with fear and hunger. "You're not doing so well, huh?" Daniel murmured. He dug into his pocket, pulling out half of the sandwich he had been saving. "Here, it's not much, but it's something." The dog hesitated before snatching the food and devouring it in seconds. Daniel smiled. "You must be starving. Come on, let's get you warmed up." That night, the stray curled up beside Daniel in his small apartment, warmth finally replacing the chill in his bones. The dog had found a home, and Daniel, though he didn't know it yet, had found something just as valuable: loyalty that would one day save his life. Chapter 2. Rusty's New Home. Morning sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of Daniel's small apartment, casting golden patches on the wooden floor. The faint hum of traffic outside signaled the start of another day, but inside everything was peaceful, except for the soft snoring of the dog curled up beside the couch. Daniel stretched, his back aching from sleeping in a sitting position. He had meant to move the dog to a blanket, but somehow, watching the poor thing sleep so soundly had kept him from disturbing it. "Guess I need to give you a name," Daniel said, rubbing his eyes. At the sound of his voice, the dog lifted his head, ears twitching. He was still wary, but seemed more comfortable than the night before. "How about Rusty?" Daniel suggested, looking at the dog's reddish-brown fur now visible in the daylight. Rusty blinked, then yawned, his pink tongue curling before he rested his head again. Daniel chuckled. "I'll take that as a yes." A struggle to survive. Daniel's finances were tight. Without a job, he barely had enough money for himself, let alone a pet. But as he watched Rusty sniff around the apartment, cautiously exploring, he knew he couldn't just abandon him. "All right, let's figure something out," Daniel muttered. He grabbed his laptop and searched for temporary work. Construction jobs, deliveries, anything that would bring in some quick cash. A few listings looked promising, and he sent out applications, hoping for a response. Meanwhile, Rusty found the small pile of dog food Daniel had managed to buy from a nearby store with his last few dollars. The dog ate eagerly, his tail wagging slightly. It was the first sign of happiness Daniel had seen from him. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Dan, you in there?" It was his neighbor, Mrs. Martinez, a kind but nosy older woman who lived down the hall. Daniel opened the door, forcing a smile. "Morning, Mrs. Martinez." Her sharp eyes immediately landed on Rusty. "Oh, you got yourself a dog. He looks like he's been through a lot." "Yeah, found him last night," Daniel admitted. "Didn't have the heart to leave him out in the cold." Mrs. Martinez nodded approvingly. "Dogs are good for the soul, mijo, but they need food too. If you ever need help, just let me know." Daniel sighed, appreciating her kindness but unwilling to take charity. "Thanks, Mrs. M. I'll figure it out." As she left, Rusty padded over, rubbing his head against Daniel's leg. Daniel smiled down at him. "Looks like it's you and me, buddy." What he didn't know was that saving Rusty's life would one day save his own.